It's my pleasure to call to order this meeting of the Santa Barbara County Board of Education. And we will begin with a call to order, please. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking roll call. I have to get my head off the freeway right now. Today, unfortunately, not only are we rather small in size, but our interpreters are ill. And so we have no simultaneous interpretation today. If we have any listeners or anyone present that needs a Spanish or wants a Spanish interpretation, if you contact the board secretary, Dr. Salcido, she will make sure that that translation is arranged for you. And in the absence of our esteemed Vice President Bruce today, I will lead the pledge. I can't do him justice, so we'll just do the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. And now, roll call.
Okay, Mrs. Alvarez Flores is absent. Mrs. Cardy.
Here.
Looks like Mrs. DeWord is absent. Ms. Ehrman. Here. Mrs. Frost.
Here.
Mr. Howell.
Here.
And Mr. Porter is absent.
I think everyone has received an amended agenda for item number 20. Other than that, we have no changes to the agenda today. And I would like to start by saying that while there are only 4 of us here today, we are a mighty 4. We are 4 is a majority on our board of 7. So even with the 3 being absent, we're still able to conduct business today. It needs 4 votes for anything to happen, for us to change or pass anything. So we would have to have a unanimous decision on anything that would come before us today. I don't know if any of you got a chance, I hope you did, to get outside and see the eclipse. I mean, if you were anywhere where there were children, oh my goodness. They were just so excited. It was almost like Christmas morning. And I just think when we have an event like that, that can help our younger generations become more in touch with nature and what's around us, we will all benefit from that in the long run. So I hope that, and I don't see any eye patches, so it looks like if you did look, you wore your glasses. The Santa Barbara School Board Association's dinner is next week, week after, whenever, soon. And at that event, 2 people are going to be recognized. One of them is a very long time member from North County on the Santa Maria Joint Union High School District Board, Jack Garvin, who's been a part of that district for decades. And he is stepping down off of that board, and we want to recognize that. And also our Teacher of the Year, Greg Wolf, of course. So all of the organizations, Dr. Salcido is helping to round up certificates from all of the school districts and those that are involved to be able to present to them at that dinner. And I guess I'm just letting the board know, on behalf of our board, I will be signing that certificate. So just wanted you to know so that you wouldn't go, wait a minute, what's that? Okay, Doctor, do you have anything today? No, Joe?
No.
Oh, all right. And I believe we do have a public comment. Oh, yes. Thank you. Sherry, we're gonna wait just a second. I forgot one thing. Um, let me get to my note. I want to acknowledge, and public comment actually is the right place to do it. The letters that have been sent to the board by 37, nearly 37 members of the county staff regarding issues that they have. And they did all of them did a very eloquent job of putting together those letters and sending them. And the board members did get them all. The items that they're bringing forward and negotiations are not something that this board has any jurisdiction over whatsoever. That's something, this board is not their employer. They work for Dr. Salcido, and she is engaged with them. She has responded to them with letters and will continue to do so, and will work in the negotiations with them and hopefully come to good a good outcome for all, which I'm sure they will. Okay. I'm going to jump right now just because I mentioned that. One of the items in that letter had to do with our start time. And I would very much like the board to have a discussion again on that. But our May agenda is looking pretty fat right now. So it'll be at a future board meeting, but we will talk about all of the aspects of the time of our board agenda. Okay, now back to public comment.
And pardon me one more time. Sorry about that. Did you want to invite the board members to make comments as well? You are.
Yeah. They have none.
Oh, you are. Yes. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
That's okay. We have a request from Sherry Ray to speak under public comments in support of AB 2222. Sherry, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Good afternoon. My name is Sherry Ray. For several years, I have written about, spoken at public comment, and offered my thoughts whenever possible about the need to follow the settled science of reading instruction in our schools. I have already sent you my thoughts about AB 2222 and its importance to the children of this county, indeed throughout the entire state of California. If the Golden State would finally follow the lead of more than 35 other states that have embraced the science of reading, our children would have a better chance of attaining their civil right to read. Sadly and predictably, though, the California Teachers Association has publicly opposed the bill. The same organization refuses to support screening for dyslexia. And in their way of controlling the legislature, they have lobbied to not even have AB 2222 scheduled for a hearing. Just as they did with SB 237, the dyslexia screening bill co-sponsored by our own Monique Limon, that was never brought to the floor. And today they are pressuring the chair of the Assembly's Education Committee to ignore the pleas of individuals, advocates, and organizations and allow the bill to die before ever hearing the merits of it. Today is the last day the bill can be scheduled, and this week has already seen a huge flurry of support and outreach to assembly members, including our own Greg Hart, to prevail upon the chair, Al Muratsushi of Torrance, to schedule the hearing. I've made my calls and sent my emails, as have thousands of others throughout the state. Sadly, it is doubtful that these respectful requests will be heard, and once again, the children will continue to suffer. Less than 50% literacy in our state ought to be raising red flags everywhere about our teaching approach. Instead, we allow politics and beliefs in flawed theories to keep science out of our classroom and continue to deny our children the right to read. The struggles that ensue lifelong are unimaginable. But with your support of the science of reading and your literacy leadership, at least the children of Santa Barbara County will have a fair chance to reach their full potential by ensuring that they are taught to read in our classrooms. Please join with other county offices of education like Los Angeles and Sacramento to provide leadership support, training, and resources focused on the science of reading. And I'm delighted that we'll be hearing more about it today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, that's it for the public comment. We'll move on to presentations. And I would like to ask Ellen Berger to please come to the podium on the presentation of proposed Assembly Bill 222 and state literacy initiatives. You got it.
So thank you. While you bring that up, thank you for that introduction too. And so today, with all that we have shared with our districts and all of the work that we're doing throughout the county, we thought that it would be a great time to actually say a little bit more about what is the science of reading. What are some of the California literacy initiatives, and what are those main components of Assembly Bill 2222? So that is exactly what I'm going to do today. There we go. So in the science of reading section of this, I'll say a little bit about defining what the science of reading or reading science is and what it is not. We'll talk briefly about the reading brain and what we mean by the science of reading. And then I'll give a brief introduction into the simple view of reading and the components of skilled reading that live within the science of reading. Then we'll talk a little bit about some of the, yes, there's people. Got it, sure. Oh. So while they're resetting that, the second area, I'll just give some of the literacy initiatives in California. And as I'm walking through them, I'll make some elements and some connections to things in our county. I can't possibly cover all of them fully and what's happening in each and every district and in our county. And then finally, I will hit on some of the major components of the bill and say a bit about the support and opposition. We don't mind closing the whiteboard. There we go. Perfection. So we'll just click through really quickly because I said all those. Great. Okay, so let's start with the science of reading. And, what do we mean when we say reading science? And so there are many definitions out there, but they all converge around some key elements. And I've chosen this one here, the science of reading from the Reading League's defining guide. So this definition came in 2002, but on the electronic version of this presentation, all of these things are linked. So you can go and find out more. So what is the science of reading? It is a vast interdisciplinary body of scientifically based research about reading and issues related to reading and writing. This is research that has been conducted over the last 5 decades all across the world, is derived from thousands upon thousands of peer-reviewed studies and conducted in multiple languages. And so what the science of reading, when we're talking about that, has done is culminated in a preponderance of evidence to inform how proficient reading and writing develop in children's brains, and why some have difficulty, as well as how we can most effectively assess and teach, and therefore improve student outcomes through prevention, intervention, and just tier 1 instruction so we can prevent those reading difficulties. So when we say that it is a multidisciplinary approach, these are some of the fields, of research coming together, everything from cognitive psychology to linguistics to neuroscience, school psychology. And really what we've come to be able to understand is as we learn more about the brain, we actually learn more about how the brain makes sense of reading. So if you look at this picture of your beautiful brain, it's not actually color coded inside like that. But as you take a look and you think about reading, because let's be honest, most of us probably in this room don't remember learning how to read. It happened. But when you think about how absolutely miraculous it is that we can read, it takes this idea that we have these letters and that you have the visual acuity to recognize letters and words. And then with that word analysis, you've got that sound to symbol connection. It also means that you have the other parts of the brain where speech and sounds, both the input and the output, come alive. And language comprehension, all of those things are in different sections of the brain. And so when we look and we talk about the science of reading, some people go, it's like rocket science. No, it's like neuroscience. It's even more complex. So when we talk about the reading brain, and a lot of this work was just reiterated and brought forth to our educators when we had Marianne Wolf here, and as we read her book and had a book study with her, the reading brain, we know that reading is not something that happens naturally. So while our brains are wired for language and there are language region in the brain, they are not hardwired for reading. And so what's really unknown to a lot of people is that human beings were never actually born to read. And reading is a human invention that reflects how the brain rearranges itself to actually learn something new. So we have this concept of neuroplasticity or brain plasticity. And that is how the brain creates new neural networks. So it actually has the ability for neurons to be reprogrammed to accomplish a new task. So it's really only in the last 5 to 10,000 years that humans have built this ability to read. And so the brain, what reading comes from is the brain rearranging itself in multiple ways to learn how to read. And this is really important because it also depends on the writing system and the medium. So we had that picture of the brain. And people's brains and the way that it all works a little differently. But also in English, for example, we have what's called a graphophonemic system for our reading. Graphemes, or the graphs, the pictures, the letters, those associate to sounds, not to concepts or meanings. In other languages, such as in some of the Asian languages, the pictures, the graphemes, the characters go to concepts, and there's a separate pathway, if you will, for sound. So the sound language and the written language might not be connected, but in English they are. Also, as we learned from Marianne Wolf, the medium makes a difference. And so whether you're reading something physically or online or in different places. So with the reading brain, as I said, it's somewhat miraculous if you think about it. The brain's capacity to form these new circuits for the cultural invention of reading from the older genetically programmed components of the brain for vision, for speech, for hearing, and all those different pieces and parts for language. So each component part is necessary for the whole circuit to function well enough to achieve expert reading. And so that's why when you hear people talking about the science of reading, they'll say reading is not natural. It must be taught. It must be taught systematically. So that's your neuroscience lesson for today without getting into the weeds. I think it's just as important when we're talking about the definition of the science of reading to say what it is not. So it is not an ideology or a philosophy. It is a body of research. It is not a fad. It is not new. It is not a trend. It is not a pendulum swing. It's also not a political agenda. When we say it's not a one size fits all approach, I want to be clear. Sometimes people say, no, are you saying that we don't all agree on the research? No, the research is a preponderance of evidence. What we're saying is the science of reading isn't in and of itself an approach. It's a body of knowledge that informs how we approach teaching reading. And we know that children's brains are beautiful and different. And so you have to use the science of reading. So you cannot apply a one size fits all approach to students. It's also not a program of instruction. You can't say this is a science of reading program. You can say this is a science of reading aligned program, and the degree to which it is aligned to the science of reading is a place for discussion, as a place for evaluation, but it is not a program in and of itself. And it's also not a single specific component of instruction, such as phonics. So, what is it, you ask? Well, in just a moment, I'm going to talk about a simple view of reading, but I'm going to rely on my friend Al to say part of the reason we say what it is not is because oftentimes we want to make things simple, and it's not simple. It's complex, it's neuroscience. But I want to make this as simple as possible, but not any simpler. So this is what we call the simple view of reading. As you can see, this has been known, accepted, and in the research since the mid-'80s. And what this is that the simple view of reading is that it is not an additive approach, it is a multiplicative relationship. So we've got two components. The first is word recognition, and the second is language comprehension. And the product of those two together is what creates reading comprehension. So I'm going to go into those a little bit more with this visual that's called Scarborough's reading rope. And it's a visual metaphor for the development of those two aspects and the development of skills over time, represented by the strands of the rope. So as you look on the bottom, that's the WR. That's word recognition. Those are elements like phonological awareness. That's the ability to understand and differentiate sounds, syllables, phonemes. Phonemes are little pieces, little units of sound that students learn to differentiate. And I should say children learn to differentiate, because phonemic awareness begins before they're students. Word recognition also involves decoding and sight recognition of words. The other part of that equation is language comprehension. So you can see 5 big categories of language comprehension, including background knowledge, vocabulary, structures of language, including syntax and semantics, verbal reasoning, and literacy knowledge. So those pieces weave together. And as you notice, the word recognition, it has to be taught systematically. It has to be taught diagnostically, but it eventually becomes increasingly automatic. At the same time, language comprehension goes from being children surrounded by language to being increasingly strategic. And as those strands of the rope weave together, we arrive at skilled reading. So I wouldn't talk to you about reading without bringing back the math. So I want to go back to that idea. So you have the word recognition and the language comprehension, those two big parts of the rope coming together. And in a multiplicative or a product relationship, you think about it's not, if you have one and not the other, you'll be partially there. So word recognition, you've got it. Language comprehension, you've got it. You multiply those together. Reading comprehension, yes. But if either of those two are missing, we do have the commutative property. So if there's word recognition without language comprehension, or vice versa, if you have no word recognition, even though you might have strong language comprehension, both of those result in not having language or reading comprehension. And so I threw in some fractions and decimals as well. But what those show is that your reading comprehension will never be stronger than the weakest part of either of those two. And so what that means is we have to attend to both. So when we think about children and people with dyslexia who have not had the kind of instruction that they need, they might be very strong in language comprehension, but not having the word recognition, the reading comprehension's not there. Similarly, I am a person very good at decoding Spanish, and I can sound like I can speak Spanish because I'm a great decoder, but I don't have the language comprehension, so I would not have the reading comprehension when I'm reading Spanish. So with that was your simple view of reading. That was a little tiny slice, but throughout the electronic version, you have many, many links if you want to know more. So literacy initiatives in California, and I want to be clear that this is not an exhaustive list. And along the way, I'll also connect to some of the things that we're seeing in our county. So I want to start here with California's Comprehensive State Literacy Plan, which was written in 2021. Every state did that. And there are multiple priorities within that plan. So many of the initiatives have emerged in the past 3-4 years to address the parts of that plan and are continuing to build upon those priorities. I also want to say, while I just got done talking about the science of reading, reading is, something that we all care very deeply about. And we have a lot of focus on the foundational skills within reading. But reading is kind of embracing of foundational skills. Likewise, literacy is more than just what we often consider skilled reading. It includes all of our language arts, our proficiency. It's literacy can be content area literacy, knowing how to read in science differently than social studies, a lot of that work. And so that also lives within the larger areas of language arts and language proficiency. And then around that is also that we have goals for biliteracy, bilingualism, or even multilingualism in our state. And so you'll see that all of those things, they're not the same grain size, but they're all in those priorities. So here is just a smattering. So I started at the top with the California Dyslexia Initiative. And so I was so glad that Sherry Ray brought up that some county offices are taking the lead because they have been given contracts that have been put forth in legislation. And those contracts do not always go to the CDE, but they're often awarded to a county office of education to be the lead. They're given monies to develop those resources, trainings for the entire state. Oftentimes, they're also coordinating the pass-through of monies to our districts, like you'll see in the Literacy Coaches Reading Specialist Educator Training Grant. They come up with such fabulous names for these things. It looks like Le Creuset, which is really good cookware. But like in that Le Creuset grant, they have supports, but also they were responsible to push money out to many of the districts across the state. So for example, Santa Maria Bonita, 6 schools in Santa Maria Bonita qualified for those funds and for that support. You see that there are learning acceleration grants. There are EWIG, effective language acquisition. Oh, wait, I've got a great laser pointer. Effective language acquisition programs. So you'll see that, for example, it'll say the lead is LA, Orange, Sacramento, San Bernardino, but we are partners with LA and we are providing Spanish language and professional learning for teachers to teach students how to read in Spanish. So, some of those are new. The Early Literacy Support Block Grant. So even though various COEs are the leads on those, they're the ones who were awarded the contracts, and then they work with many of the others. So our staff has been able to take advantage of many of the trainings and our districts and our schools, and we share those opportunities through multiple means so that they have access to get to those trainings. Also, there's a lot more. So there's the California Coalition for Inclusive Literacy, which really focuses on universal design for learning and for inclusive literacy. And so we've been involved in that. The California Reading and Literature Projects, these subject matter projects have been going on for a long time. And those are based at universities, and they cover foundational skills, reading comprehension, academic language, content area literacy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. More learning acceleration grants. The state is in the process of redesigning the pre-kindergarten learning foundations to incorporate this, not only the universal design for learning and inclusive, what we've learned about inclusive education, but also, all aligned with the science of reading. And those will come out this summer. And of course, additional grants to support the English Learner Roadmap implementation. So one of the things that I wanted to pull out of all of those initiatives, which are delivery methods for so much learning and so many resources, is this. It's called Letters, and it's a series of professional learning. And it's something that directors in our division were some of the first in the county to undertake. Also, we have charter schools, we have school districts throughout our county who are training teachers and TOSAs and coaches in letters. It is very intensive. It's 160 to 170 hours to complete. Teachers learn all about brain science and how reading develops. They do coursework online or in person. They do a lot of reading on their own, and they do bridge to practice. It is not step by step. It is not tied to any particular curriculum or program. It's curriculum agnostic, but it's systematic and helps teachers and educators, no matter what their programs are, to be able to use them with fidelity to what the research of the science of reading says. And so we've got all of that professional learning, and I shared some of the existing actions, but I also want to highlight 2 other new-ish actions and support. And the first is about required screeners in grades K through 2, and all teacher credentialing programs have an additional element that is new around literacy instruction. So the required screeners in K2, just this January, a selection panel was put into place. So RDRSSP stands for Reading Difficulties Risk Screener Selection Panel. This is actually, I just took this picture from one of our curriculum council slides where it was all explained before. But in January, the selection panel was put into place, and this May, they will bring their criteria and review process for screeners forward to the State Board of Education. Then by December, this panel will have created a list of approved screeners that will then be adopted by the State Board of Education. And by this time next year, well, or June of next year, every single one of our districts and charters will have had to adopt one of these approved instruments and start screening all children in 25-26 annually in grades kinder, first, and second. So when we shared this at Curriculum Council, there was overwhelming, yes, thank you, it's about time. You know, all of our school and district leaders were very excited about it. The other thing that's very interesting is that in all of the teacher credential programs at the universities primarily, there have always been 6 program standards. There has been the addition of a 7th. So whether you're going to be a multiple subject teacher, an education specialist, or a single subject secondary teacher, you now will have in all of those programs a 7th program standard about effective literacy instruction for all students, aligned with, with the research and the science. And it also includes about English language development. So that will in the future become part of every single accredited California teaching credential program. And they're in the process of making those adaptations now. So all of that is to say that's some of the stuff that's happening. And I think that it's helpful because as we look at Assembly Bill 2222, which is Rubio, Democrat, Baldwin Park, I just want to say we don't usually address a bill that has not yet been passed, but we're bringing this forth because it has in its name science of reading. And so it's garnering a lot of attention, which you framed for me so let's take a look at it. So first and foremost, you can see that Assembly Bill 222 would define evidence-based literacy instruction in all of those places, that they exist in Ed Code as this: evidence-based, explicit and systematic instruction in phonological and phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary and oral language development, fluency, comprehension, and writing. And there's more language there about language as language proficiency, that adheres to the science of reading. And so there are 3 main components or categories that I would say of proposed changes. And the first is teacher training. The second is around instructional materials. And the third is around teacher preparation. So in teacher training, it would require that every TK5 teacher, and I'll add to that TOSA, teacher on special assignment, literacy specialist, instructional coach, would by 2028 complete at least 30 hours of training from an approved list of trainings. And district would have to inform parents if less than 90% of teachers had completed that beginning in 2028. And it would need to be in place if the law passes by 2026. So it has to be, the list has to be developed. And so then that would give about 2 years to get that going. The second piece is related to instructional materials. And so there are a couple of changes here. One is there is currently a statute that says that reading cannot be adopted. We cannot have a state adopted list for a year after the mathematics adoption list comes forth. And so the mathematics adoption list is going to be in November of 2026. Which means that the earliest that the state board could have adopted a list would have been in January of 2027. 2028. Yes, because this is 24 and November of 2025 is math, 2027 is ELA. So this would move that up. But also, there are some interpretations of the way that the language is written now that would change local control. And it would move the adoption cycle and require that districts adopt off that list. There is always a state adopted list, but districts are not required to adopt off of it. It just saves them in grades, in the elementary grades, from aligning to the standards and aligning to the social content review. And so this would bring forth the science of reading part. And so there's debate on the interpretation of the language of whether it has to be aligned to the science of reading or that they could not adopt off of the list. So that would be a change in local board powers and put it back on the states. Then the last is the teacher preparation. So what it would put forth is if the programs at our universities do not align with that program standard, that they could face probation or loss of accreditation, and also that there would be a reading specialist appointed to the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing, on the accreditation. So as we've heard, there is both support and opposition to the bill. And so on the left-hand column with the green check, these are the organizations who help to sponsor the bill and are very much in support of the bill that they are sponsoring. On the right are some of the organizations who have written opposition to the bill. So the California Teachers Association, the California Association of Bilingual Educators called CABE, and Californians Together. But for Families in Schools, Decoding Dyslexia, California, and EdVoice. And so what's really interesting about this is, and I have this reading league where I started and brought it back together, is that last March at the Reading League Summit in Vegas, people who are on both sides of the support and oppose came together in a joint statement about the science of reading. And so the summit sought to highlight the areas of alignment between the experts in reading science and the experts in English learner, or as you'll sometimes hear, emergent bilingual education. And as I said, there was significant agreement from leaders on both sides. And they had agreement about reading science and language development. In fact, some of the people who have written in opposition of the bill are keynote speakers at next week or week after at this month's reading summit about the science of reading. And so that's what makes this, I think, garner so much attention. Because what we see is where there is agreement with, at least with the CABE and the Californians Together, is there is agreement on the problem, the need to ground knowledge and practice in the science of reading. But I think what's going on is that the agreement on the problem doesn't mean that they necessarily agree on the solution. And the bill might be that area of, when you have these different solutions. So what we're not seeing is arguing the science of reading. What we're seeing is the arguing of the makeup of the bill. And I put those in dots because that is an extraction of kind of what we're hearing and seeing in what they're saying. So I think that people are not saying, we're not mad at what's in the bill, we're mad at what's not in the bill. Because if we're not explicitly calling out language development at the same level as reading, then there might be fear that it gets diminished. There are others who might be thinking about changes in local control as a precedent, or the feasibility and the unintended outcomes in the details of the bill. So we don't know. But one of the things that we can see and that we've seen sometimes is that opposition can open conversation. And sometimes discussing the complexity of the implementation of ideas and the unintended consequences from multiple perspectives can potentially lead to a new and better version and clarity about the impact of implementation so that it works better. So, what my hope is that the people on both sides can come together, even if they don't agree on the language as it's written, to find that common ground as they have done before, that is the agreement on the problem and on the support of the science of reading to craft a bill that will serve our children. And so that's what we did today, I hope. And now, what questions might you have?
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for that great presentation and the lesson in neuroplasticity. Very helpful. No, but I'll just it was very educational and informative to really understand the components and what's happening in legislation, and then also what's happening in terms of the agreement toward the legislation versus not. And so, and I appreciate how you ended it saying that for the most part, these both the sides that are for this legislation and against this legislation ultimately agree on the problem. They're just looking at how to implement solutions. And so, and I find that a lot of times that is the rub. The devil is in the details of like, we all want the same thing, but how do we come about that? So my question would be, in your opinion, what are some of the ways that you think that bridge can be crossed between, these both sides have these differences and opinions of how the implementation will go. And so working together to make that happen, I know that is, remains to be seen, but in your, you are an expert in this. So what are some of your ideas of ways or modalities that could happen?
Yeah, I really appreciate the question. And I hope that this doesn't sound like a dodge, but what I I feel very confident in helping our teachers, helping our schools, helping our districts implement the science of reading, but I am not an expert in writing legislation, crafting legislation that well, at all, but especially good legislation. So I can't come up with a legislative, but what I can say is that our commitment to supporting the implementation and the awareness in all of our programs and in all of our schools and districts will not waver no matter what happens here. And I can't speak on behalf of all of our districts and all of our schools, but we just see that that is the direction that they're going, legislation or not. That doesn't help children in places where there might be, so I'm not trying to represent the state, but there's a difference between our commitment and my ability to broker good legislation. So thank you for the question.
Thank you, Ellen. You make everything look so crystal clear when we know it's anything but. But we all do agree that literacy is paramount. It's a huge
Absolutely.
issue. California is deficient in providing whatever course of instruction that will lead to, critical mass in literacy. What are the obstacles in declaring a curriculum around science of reading on a per district basis when it seems like everybody wants to swim in that direction? They understand the components and the efficacy, and there are best practices built in, and there's just different labels as attached to different types of curriculum. So I'm wondering why districts will hold off on adopting a program that does embody more of those best practices. And then my second question is there a resistance to screening? Ms. Ray indicated that the dyslexia screening was defeated, Senator Lamone's bill. And now I see that there's required screenings in K through 2. That seems to me, I guess I'm thinking of KSAP and, preschool, such an important baseline information. Was there resistance built in? And is that something that you could speak to?
So okay, so I'm going to answer the questions in opposite order. I'm going to start with screeners and then go back to curriculum. So with the screeners, this set of screeners is the reading difficulties risk. So it's more than just dyslexia. It's all reading difficulties risk screener. And it's happening at kinder, first, and second. The term screener, one of the things that's really clear is that screeners are not diagnostics. So when you say is there resistance, well, clearly there was resistance legislatively. I think until people started to see good screeners, usable screeners start to emerge, and we don't know what will be on the list, but we have some views from the work that's been developing in San Francisco and who had a grant to develop some of these. I think that we, at least in our curriculum council, we're not seeing resistance. I think resistance comes from people thinking that a screener can do something that it can't. That screeners are not diagnostics. So it's not going to diagnose. It's not going to decide with certainty. When it comes to curriculum, I can't speak for all of the multiple pieces and obstacles. But one thing that I will say is we've got a long history in California of assuming that if you just pick the right curriculum, that it's teacher proof and it will be presented perfectly. And what a lot of our districts are doing right now is that they're engaging folks in letters training so that they can choose through the process, they can choose a curriculum, a set of instructional materials that have all of those pieces, and more so that they can deliver. I don't like that word of deliver, but that they are really good consumers of these texts. There's a few that are, widely available in California, and people are starting to look through them. And they're also waiting to see what else comes forth as well. So when you say, what are the obstacles? They're the same obstacles to everything, because everyone's doing everything everywhere all at once, all the time. And they're working on multiple things as well. So we have some districts who have already done so. We have other districts that are in the planning phases, others that are wanting there to be several, and take a look at those.
Can you highlight for us the teacher training that County Ed has been heading up, regardless of whether AB 2222 passes or
Yes.
not? In the meantime, what are we doing? The
So
County
I
Ed
tried
level?
to hit a few of the things along the way, but also in front of you, you have just our brochure. Because one of the things that we have been doing, there's a lot there. And so I won't do the exhaustive list, but I've mentioned through curriculum council, through trainings, through contracts. But one of the things that we offer is, while districts are in the process of working on their adoption, they still have their current materials. And not all the teachers are going through letters training, even though quite a few are. So, and also our districts are doing different grain sizes of that training and taking advantage of some of the other trainings that are available through all of those listed things that I shared with you that are statewide trainings, but also being able to help them use their current materials and understand what kinds of strategies that are contraindicated. And so one of the things that we find and that we hear from it, site and district leaders is that even when teachers have a program, they sometimes are still stuck in these strategies that they learned along the way, not knowing that those are not effective strategies. So no matter what instructional materials you have to be a good consumer and a good decision maker of them as well. And so those are some, as you have in front of you there, just some of the customized supports that we offer, in addition to the work we've done with Marianne Wolf and providing access to all of those statewide initiatives.
Thank you so much for that. I know that there's a lot of learning and unlearning to be done, and I know that districts have site-based decision-making on this, and it's not in our purview to decide what a district should or shouldn't do or teach or lift up in terms of curriculum, but I think it's just really helpful to hear it again.
And no one's resisting moving in that direction. It's just how quickly they're going to move in all the different pieces that it takes, both the training and the materials to come together. Thanks for the question.
Clearly, there are an incredible number, probably unknowable number of issues and factors that play into what's going on right now. Like you mentioned about, there's not only adopting a philosophy or an approach, but the tools and the way you implement it and the training to implement it and the follow through. And I mean, it's amazing. And I really appreciate that you can tell us what's going on, give us an update and fill us in on, what was that word? Neuroplasticity? Plasticity. Yes. Can't say it. I realize in this presentation, my big hang up is I can't decode. I haven't ever been able to learn a foreign language. And I think that's the break.
It's not too late.
It's not too
The
late.
brain continues to create new neural pathways.
Keep trying.
If I may insert before we round
course.
up. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Ellen, thank you so much for the presentation. I really appreciate it, and for the board for having this presentation. And I know you've been interested and eager to learn more. We have seen AB 2222, one of the bills amongst other bills that have come forward. And I really appreciate, Ellen, that what you did before getting into the bill was zoom out and really talk about reading and literacy and learning and all of the framing ahead of time. I've, worked with Ellen for over 15 years, and ever since we've worked together, Ellen's brought forward reading and literacy and the science of reading and all of that importance. And she's really built a team. On the back of your brochure, we have some of the team members who are all deeply trained, and can speak to all that Ellen did, and even take it a little further in terms of the direct services we're providing with our schools. I really am we all are so eager to make movement on all of this in our schools. And I am yet so excited that there's a huge concerted agreement around the science of reading, and now how we move forward will be very dynamic. And so again, appreciate how, what is the quote from your friend Al? Simplest.
Oh, make things as simple as possible, but no simpler.
Yes. And I think you succeeded in that. Thank you so much, Ellen. Thank you to the board. I appreciate it.
And Dr. Salcido, would you like to take us into item number 9?
Oh, I would love to. Thank you so much.
Let me move into that direction.
Hi, Sherry.
All right, well, we're moving into a second presentation, a different presentation on career technical education. And I'm really excited to bring up Sarah Cameron, our director of CTE. And she's been our director since July. So this just under a year here. And I know, Sarah, you will introduce your colleagues that are with you. Sarah's CTE department is under Bridget's division. And you know, it's evolved a lot over the last few years. So I thought we would pause here and have Sarah share what is it that we're working towards in our CTE and how are we supporting our districts. So Sarah, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Good afternoon, board members, Dr. Salcido, and members of cabinet. We're very excited to share the work of our department with you today. And with me, I have our CTE team. We have Christine Petrone, she's our CTE coordinator, and we have Vera Owens, who is our senior administrative assistant. So that is our mighty team. And I want to start off by saying that this is just a very exciting time for CTE and career education in all of California. In recent years, we've seen a significant shift from the outdated model where students had to choose between vocational education or pursuing a path to college while they're in high school. And now we're focused on an approach that includes both career experiences and the option to pursue higher ed opportunities after high school that are aligned to their career goals. So with that, right. So we know living in Santa Barbara County is expensive. We want our students to have a career that allows them to live and work in our county, which really heightens the need for students to leave high school or community college or four-year university with the skills, certifications, or degrees with the certifications or degrees that will lead to high need, high wage opportunities here in Santa Barbara County. So a lot of career pathway related efforts have been happening to align CTE programming with local and regional industry needs. And these have been made at the state, county, and regional level. So today I'll be sharing how our department is focused on supporting our districts in creating and refining pathways tailored to these industry demands. So what we're going to talk about first will be our grant funding, and then the experiences we provide for our CTE educators, a little bit about our apprenticeship program, CTE pathway support for dual enrollment and how we're supporting our districts in alignment with community college efforts, and then also considerations for future CTE efforts and countywide efforts to develop K-16 pathways to industry. So these are 3 of our CTE related grants. They are in progressively larger squares because of the areas they support. So starting with our CTE incentive grant or CTIG grant, this one supports our juvenile justice and community schools. And we received for this year's allocation just over $287,000. The next one is our K-12 Strong Workforce Grant. And for this one, we have received for this round of funding just over $1.4 million. And we have many districts in Santa Barbara County that are part of this effort in a consortium model. And then our K-16 Collaborative Grant is a new grant this year that we are a part of. And this is a 6-county effort divided into 2 microregions, of which we are part of the Tri-County Ventura, Santa Barbara, and San Luis Obispo counties. So the next 3 slides, I'm going to talk a little bit more about each one of these grants. So starting off with our CTIG grants. So this supports Fitzgerald Community School and Dos Puertos Juvenile Hall. And with this funding, we have supported our manufacturing CTE pathway, and we have a multi-industry career exploration modules that students at both sites participate in. And in collaboration with probation, we're working on a new culinary pathway for the students at Dos Puertos, that we're in the beginning stages of that conversation. We also have a newly hired counselor for our juvenile court and community schools who also supports the career education piece of their work. And we pay for, we fund part of her salary through our CTIG funds. Our next one is our K-12 Strong Workforce Grant. And this one is an annual application as well. And each year we've applied as a consortium. And the districts that are participating with us this year are in pink stars on the map. And they are, my star placement might not have been perfect. They are Lompoc Unified, Cuyama, Orcutt, Santa Barbara Unified, Santa Ynez Valley, Carpinteria, Los Osos, Santa Maria Bonita, and Santa Maria Joint Union High School District. Each time there is a round of funding, certain pathways or industry sectors are identified as the focus areas based on labor market data and where districts are in their development of pathways to industry needs. And so this particular grant focuses on health, agriculture, and education pathways, either developing new ones or refining those in existence already. And the next one is the K-16 Regional Collaborative. And so this one, it's exciting to think about something that's really far-reaching to develop pathways that are going to help students across our county and beyond. Knowing that some of our higher education institutions around us don't service just one county. And so how are we creating pathways that our students are able to move in and out of, even if they have to cross a county line to be able to do that? And so the industry sectors that are focused on for this particular grant are engineering, health, and STEM education. The Tri-County area identified engineering as the pathway to start with. The institutions that are focused in this first cycle are in Santa Barbara County, are UCSB, Allen Hancock College, Santa Barbara City College, and then the two K-12 districts who are part of this first cycle are Carpinteria Unified and Santa Maria Joint Unified School District. For cycle 2, which we will begin conversations very soon, next month, I believe, our hope is to get more of our K-12s involved in this work, and then also to continue to build out engineering and begin with health and STEM education efforts across the 3 counties. So the amount awarded in total was just over $6.4 million for that. So next we'll talk about some of the programs that we provide from our department. And the first one is our CTE Teacher Industry Tours. And these started last year with a goal to provide an opportunity for teachers to connect with local businesses, to better understand current workplace practices, employer needs, and then the desired technical and professional skills that make a successful employee in their company. Teachers then take this information back to their classrooms and incorporate their new learning with their students. And you'll see a list of businesses on the screen that were visited for our North County CTE Teacher Tours for this school year. So far, we're not done. And we also this year expanded into South County. So South Santa Barbara County CTE teachers started with a pretty exciting tour. You can see some pictures up there on the screen. We'll continue tours in both North and South County moving forward. We've changed the model slightly to also now include for both North and South to include our high school counselors. We know they're critical in the work to help students on their career journey. And so they are now included in all of our invitations to be part of this effort. And we've also included Allen Hancock College and Santa Barbara City College faculty that are in the same industry pathways. So those teachers have an additional opportunity to connect with each other, since the students would start in the high school pathway and may continue in the community college pathway. And so that way we're having even more alignment opportunities. And next is our CTE teacher internship program. And this is an opportunity for our CTE teachers to join an industry partner for a week-long experience during the summer. And the pairing's intentional, and we want to make sure that the CTE courses taught by the teacher align with the business, what they're working towards for their company. And we start this with a collaborative conversation to really think about what that week's going to look like. So it's intentional, so they get a well-rounded experience while they're during spending their week with that business. And thank you to Christine for all of the work she's been doing on that. And time is also provided for teachers to think about the work they're doing during that week and how they're going to take that back into their classrooms. This year, we also started an apprenticeship program for early childhood education. And this has been done in partnership with our early childhood education program. And very exciting to be able to offer this career opportunity for either currently practicing early childhood educators or those who are interested in maybe becoming early childhood educators. The occupations we offer within this program are associate teacher, teacher, master teacher, and site supervisor, all within the early childhood education realm. So they would be working in our Santa Barbara County Education Office run preschool programs. So our goal is by 2026 to enroll at least 25 apprentices, and we're on our way with 6 enrolled so far for the program that we just started. But very exciting for that. Next, I wanted to share a little bit about our collaboration with our community colleges. There has been a lot of effort over the last several years to provide dual enrollment opportunities where students are receiving both high school and college credit for classes. The college coursework that's happening at the high school is the same curriculum that's used, and the teachers collaborate to make sure the curriculum is at the same level of rigor as it would be at the college. You'll notice that we currently have 42 dual enrollment courses that are in partnership with Santa Barbara City College, and 41 that are in partnership with Allen Hancock College. And of those, the ones in Santa Barbara, for Santa Barbara City College, about half of them are CTE pathways that are dually enrolled courses. And then at Allen Hancock College, 30 of the 41 are CTE pathway courses. And we also support career exploration events and registration and all the things that help students determine their next steps on their career journey. So as we mentioned before, there's a lot of efforts happening in career education in California, region and state level. A couple of these efforts I'd like to highlight are the Vision 2030, which is community colleges effort. And one of the impact areas for this is the goal for students to have 12 units of college credit before they graduate from high school. So this is something that the dual enrollment efforts that have already been underway are going to definitely be a great step in getting to that goal. And also, they're really focused on figuring out how to remove barriers to higher education for traditionally underserved students. And so that is two of the focus areas that they have that will impact our students. And Governor Newsom has signed an executive order to develop a master plan for career education. They're in the feedback time right now where anybody on their website can provide any feedback. They're having regional input sessions as well. The focus areas there within that plan are to increase equitable access to living wage jobs by creating and strengthening education and training pathways, and then also to build talent pipelines in the priority sectors that include education, health, and climate science, among others. So this fall, we will know more about the impact that will have on our district's CTE programs. And we are engaged in many workforce development conversations across the county. Our school districts, higher education institutions, industry, chambers of commerce, community partners are all working to find answers to address workforce needs and gaps in our county. So there's a need to provide career pathway clarity for students and job seekers to move into living wage or continue in living wage opportunities. And this is combined with the complexity of the ever-changing career options that we have. We know that we're going to see impacts with artificial intelligence, automation, and the growing industries of energy and climate science that are still to be seen. And so we're wanting to help districts prepare students for fields that don't exist yet or do, but are just getting the surface scratched. So in an attempt to align all of these efforts that are happening across the county, we're working alongside our educational institutions and related partners, many of whom are listed on this screen, to develop a larger scale county-wide career pathway to industry pipeline plan. A couple of months ago, Luis Servin, Executive Director for the Santa Barbara County Workforce Development Board, spoke here, and he was sharing a little bit about that work. And so all of that is continuing and moving forward with conversations to develop that larger plan. And a few pictures of our amazing CTE educators and students. Our high schools have created many very robust and very excellent CTE pathway programs over the last several years in their districts. And with that, we can answer any questions you might have.
Congratulations. You have completed your first full board presentation. And I think there will be many more. Thank you very much. This CTE is an area that's dear and near to me, and I'm just really thrilled that finally it's coming to light how important it is that when our kids are educated, that there is some emphasis in both college and career, not a divide, but a commingling of those things. And I really appreciate this. These tours are a great experience for the kids and adults too. So thank you very much, Sarah. And any questions?
Question.
Joe?
Very good presentation. It's inspiring to see all of the financial support. Looking at the page that had the ever increasing size blocks, the 287 and the 1,000,004, 6.5 million. What are the funding sources for each of those? Where did that money come from?
So state level funding.
It's all state level.
All of it is state level funding from multiple entities at the state level, which is part of the reason for developing a career master plan. Is a lot of funding for career education has come from different departments. And so really they're trying to figure out how do we consolidate all of this into one really just master plan that will make sense and not have so many different entities funding it, but it's all state funding.
And are there many other county offices and other organizations vying for the funds? I assume it's a very competitive process.
They are all competitive grants. Yeah.
Congratulations on everyone involved in getting this level of funding.
Sarah, I have one quick question for you. Which of the CTE pathways has the highest population or is the most popular?
The most popular is agriculture.
It is ag.
Across our county, for sure. And then there's 15 industry sectors and, up to 30 pathways at each school, and they're all different. But yes, agriculture, I would say, is the most well-developed, longest standing with the most students in it.
I know it was in Carpinteria, my district. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I just want to say thank you, Sarah. This was a wonderful presentation. And like Judy said, Madam Chair, this program is very near and dear to my heart. I really appreciate how the youth have another pathway to explore education and explore a career, because we all know that traditional classroom settings aren't always the best for every learner. So this like hands-on is so valuable, and being able to partner with the community. So and the funding, all of these aspects that make this program really great. The two questions that came to mind in terms of um, the the different pathways that are offered. You had mentioned like growing industries and looking at energy and industries that aren't even here yet. So it's great to see that. And that was kind of my question: are you looking forward toward other opportunities or industries that aren't even on the map yet? So that it's great that you answered that question. And then looking at ideas about electricians, like any kind of programs around electricians, if especially that's like a very entry, easy to access for renewables, a lot of electrification, EV charging, and then also with solar. So just kind of wanted to get some ideas about that. And then I know we had a wonderful presentation by Kristen Escobedo last month about the special education program. And I don't remember if there was any kind of similar pathway program that we have for the early education, early development education program. And so wanted to see if there's something like that for special education as well.
So yes and yes. So our early childhood education pathways are actually part of the education pathways that some of our districts are building up with the K-12 strong workforce funding. And so they're working on both early childhood education, and then also what does that look like if you want to go into a secondary education, and how do you get a well-rounded pathway experience so you can decide which direction to go. And then this would be for all students to be able to do that. For the electrician, there are pathways that are within the construction fields that do align with that. And we heard about an apprenticeship recently as well. That is another opportunity that we want to make sure part of this larger plan of making sure our students are aware that those programs exist, that they can enter immediately after high school or even in their senior year. I don't know if did that answer your questions?
I think it's very interesting that we simplify these titles and put them up on a list like agriculture. And people think of the field and crops and picking, and kids in school have home examples of people in the fields picking. But what this can open them up to is there's so much more in that area that can be studied, and you can make a career where you may not ever go in a field. I mean, you may be developing seeds, products, soil, whatever. And it's just fascinating that we can open up those areas to a much larger thing than just agriculture. Same with construction, right? You know, it's just, yeah.
And the ag mechanics and ag robotics fields are huge and growing.
Yeah.
So yeah, very
there was
exciting.
a huge ag welding program at Hancock College. And when it was just welding, and I think it was just one of the classes in the welding list was ag welding. And people were in that, even if they weren't in the other welding classes. So there's more out there than meets the eye. That's for sure. Good luck.
For sure.
Good. Look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Salcido, you're on.
All right. And as Sarah is walking back to her seat, I want to say thanks to the whole CTE department for being here. Yeah, really tremendous. All three of them, the mighty, tiny and mighty. And I will say, wherever I go in terms of workforce development, whether it's Partners in Education, Workforce Development Board, Lompoc meetings, SBCC, this team is there. I mean, we are really, really there, and developing great relationships. Those business partnerships and visits really can't happen unless you start really cultivating those relationships. So very, very well done in terms of all areas around CTE development. Okay, the superintendent's report is here in the book for you. And I wanted to add just a few elements, and I'm going to do them by timeline, what comes first and what's coming next, in that order. So just for your information, on April 15 and 16, which is Monday and Tuesday, the 58 California county superintendents are convening. We do that 3 times a year approximately, and they're happening to convene in Santa Barbara. So wanted you to know that they'll be here right in Santa Barbara County. And I'm really excited to be not the host for the entire meeting, but a host county superintendent for the other county superintendents. And may we all put in the universe great weather, blue skies, and a really wonderful time and opportunities for learn. So that'll be Monday and Tuesday. The second component I wanted to bring forward is the date that Madam Chair brought forward about the Santa Barbara County School Boards Association dinner. I think there's only 1 or 2 seats left at this point, but it is April 24th. Wanted to make sure that you knew. The third piece is eModinari is happening May 25th, 26th, 27th, Memorial Day weekend. And you'll see behind me, the very top right corner, it was the square that was co-sponsored last year on behalf of Santa Barbara County Education Office employees, and was co-sponsored by the board and many of our team executive cabinet at SBCEO. So we wanted to extend the invitation once again, should you want to, totally optional and voluntary, to participate in contributing to a square. Bridget Boblets will be sending out an email later today to just extend that invitation. And we're looking to put up a big square again on behalf of our organization employees. And then the fourth is capital advisors. So we have a contract with capital advisors who provide workshops around budget and legislation. The May revise, it's a 0-cost workshop here at the county education office, is on May 29th. I believe it is at 9 a.m. It's an a.m. Presentation. If that's incorrect, I'll make sure to shift that for you. But it's here at the auditorium in Santa Barbara SBCEO. Capital Advisors does a really nice job. They also provide online options as well. I don't have those dates, but this one is the one in person here in Santa Barbara County. So those were the 4 timeline inputs that I wanted to provide you. I wanted to pause here and see if you had any questions or comments on the remarks that I provided to you in the report. Okay, all right, then back to you. Thank you.
We'll move on to Thank you, Joe. It's all, we'll now move on to the consent agenda, and it's all our normal consent agenda items such as minutes, registration of credentials, and declaration of surplus. I will entertain a motion. So moved. And a second, please.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Consent agenda is passed. And now we're going to move on to the safety plan. And I would like to ask Bridget Bublitz if she would come to the podium for any questions or comments on this. It was presented to us last month, right? Or was it?
Great question. So typically, thank you for inviting me up just really
Absolutely.
quickly. Just want to start by saying thank you to the team this year in creating the comprehensive school safety plan. As you could see in the document itself, there's a list of collaborators on this, our special ed team, our ECE team, our juvenile court and community schools. And this was really spearheaded this year by Dennis Thomas, our new school safety liaison, and Elise Simmons, the coordinator for our office. And you're right and correct in that it usually comes before the board in March, by March 1st. What we learned through the process this last fall as we rolled out school safety symposium and created a new template is that the timeline of March 1st is for our school site council to make sure to have adopted the safety plan. And so that was done by the school site council that is part of our juvenile court and community schools. So it's actually coming to you for the first time this month in April, and didn't come in March. And so just to clarify that. One other thing I'll just state about this year's plan, you may have noticed, it looks a little bit different. The formatting was slightly different than previous years. And our comms team did such a lovely job in collaboration with our office or my division in updating a new template that was provided in the fall to all of our school districts. And so our office also adopted that template. And so the form that you're looking at looks slightly different if you were to compare versions from last year. The last thing I'll just note, or two things actually about this year's comprehensive plan. One is that it incorporated the standard response protocols that we have adopted countywide. So you see that language referenced in the plan. And additionally, this year's plan, we took even a deeper dive than we have in previous years, where we're really focused on our juvenile court and community schools and special ed programs, but we also incorporated our ECE centers. And you'll see sort of a table that encompasses each section of the plan and which sites it's applicable to. So we really were trying to be all inclusive of our programs that we operate on our own sites, programs that we operate in conjunction or on school district sites, and then programs that we maybe even operate with a shared office space or probation, for example. So you'll see it's very comprehensive this year. And if you have any questions related to this year's new plan, I'm happy to answer them for you.
Does the board have any questions? Joe?
Not a question, but I think when Mr. Thomas came, we met him for the first time, it was really helpful. I think it was within the last 2 or 3 months, but it really put a lot of real life examples, and it was very informative to us. And I think reading the plan, you see how comprehensive it is, and there are things that I certainly would not have thought about that are not only presented but in such a detailed basis. But so this is terrific, and I know we need this. I would encourage another visit, a periodic visit from Mr. Thomas, because it really just it's very informative.
Absolutely. We can leverage his expertise,
Yes.
which has been wonderful.
Great.
Okay.
Hearing no more questions, can I have a motion?
I move approval.
Second.
Second, any discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes. We have approved the Santa Barbara County Educational Office's comprehensive school safety plan. And I have the cards that were handed out when Dennis was here, and they're great. They really are. I almost wished everybody on my street had one. Because it's just the consistency and establishing a baseline and a commonality is just, when you're in an emergency, you don't have time to figure all that out. So well done indeed. Okay, now we have some information items. Did anyone have any questions about the accountability report cards? If so, I think we have. Yes, I see Renee and I see Kirsten. Do we have any questions for Renee or Kirsten? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Report by Board Legal Committee. That would be Mr. Joe.
Yes, I will report. The board legal committee comprised of Ms. Frost, Ms. Herman, and myself met last Friday. Joining us were Bridget Boblett, Steve Torres, and Kirsten Escobedo, and I think I could give you a detailed report that would be almost longer than the meeting. And I promise not to do that. But there are many, many moving parts. Trying to synthesize it down, we talked about the needs that we have, and Bridget explained with early childhood education, ECE, those needs. Kirsten explained special education, what those needs are. Steve walked us through the funding sources, which are many. Several have expiration dates, and they have differing requirements. And then a huge imponderable is, what is the real estate market? We can theorize, we can say how much money we have, what we need, but then the real question is, what is out there that is available? And when you look at what's available, do you rent space? It is conceivable you buy space with funding sources. It gets to be extremely challenging proposition. Just through this, wearing a hat as acting for purposes of the meeting director of facilities. That position is posted, and it'd be wonderful to get a talented person in to lead this effort. The conclusion, to the extent I can give you a conclusion, the immediate needs are 5 to 7 classrooms. Between ECE, I believe the number was 2 for ECE, and then 5, a total of 6 to 7 between ECE and special ed. Also, we consider there's not immediacy, but it is certainly coming up in Santa Maria. Our facility there, lease expires in 2026. Our facility here, the lease expires 2029. The important thing is everyone who was Superintendent Salcido was also, and Anna were part of the meeting. We had a Zoom connection with Santa Barbara that I think was a really efficient way to have everyone involved. Everyone knows what the issues are. I was very impressed by the amount of information provided, and many actions are taking place on a parallel basis. It's not waiting to accomplish one before we can do two, before we can do three. There are many things happening at once. So either Ms. Frost or Ms. Ehrman want to comment, but I thought it was a very effective meeting. Clearly was preliminary. We will have more meetings as time goes by, as investigation of real estate markets and other things come forth. We will keep the board up to date. The last point is we're in the weeds, and there are a lot of weeds, and they're really thick. But the committee is taking this information, ultimately will develop proposal or plan, which will be discussed, vetted, and determined at a board level. So the committee is just doing the spade work, to really beat up the weeds analogy, metaphor. But so we will have something substantive at the appropriate time to bring back to the board for the board consideration and action.
There are a lot of moving pieces. Is there anything you'd like to add? Thank you very much, Joe. And thank you, team, for all the work that you're doing. I mean, we went to one meeting, but I hate to think of the amount of staff hours that it took just to bring to us what you did at that meeting, let alone moving forward. So may the force be with you. Information item 17, personnel report. Any comments? Number 18, Williams Uniform Complaints Quarterly Report. These are standard things that come forward. Number 19, great correspondence from the California Department of Education. We had a positive certification of our first interim report. Yay! All right, we have a discussion item today, and with us, we have our representative from legal counsel. I did want to mention that with the pending actions that we may be dealing with next month, both the expulsion hearing and the interdistrict transfer, a question that has come up in the past is any conflict of interest with our legal counsel. We've anticipated this, and Dr. Salcido has already looked into that, and the results are that there is no complication of conflict of interest for either the expulsion or the interdistrict transfer. So we're good to go. Austin, you're on.
Great. Well, this is kind of a coming attractions talk, I guess. So we have word that there is one interdistrict transfer appeal set for next month, and now one expulsion appeal set for next month. Obviously, these things sometimes resolve themselves before they ever get to you, but assuming they don't, we just wanted to provide a little bit of information about the process and what to look for. It's a little bit difficult to talk about these concepts without facts in front of you, obviously. And so sometimes you have to think back to past cases, which, you can't really talk about in an open meeting. And so what I thought I'd do is just remind you of a few things from both policies, because I don't think there's been an expulsion appeal in like a decade and a half or something like that. But there has been some interdistrict transfers, so I know we have some recent experience with those. So yeah, I just want to point you to your policies, give you some tools and some things to think about as you get the packets in anticipation of these appeal hearings. The overarching theme is to stay in your lane. And I wanted to think of a more non-threatening way to say that, but that's what I came up with, and that's what I'm going to roll with. So how do you figure out what your lane is for the IDT versus the expulsion appeal? Well, for IDTs, a lot of that comes straight out of your policy. And for you guys, I think you've already maybe gotten copies, or you will at least. I know it's always a part of the packet that you get. That's Board Policy 5117.1. And that has most of what you need. I think there's also some appeals guides that can be helpful as well, but meat of what you're looking for is going to be in your policy. So the important.
Excuse me. I have one copy. Would anyone like to see it as you're going? Okay, great. So, Joe. Yeah, that's right. And it's also online if you're online. Okay.
So
you bet.
that's the appeal guide, I guess, that has the policy
And it has
in
the
the back.
policy in the back. This one is the expulsion packet, so I'm happy to pass this one separately as well. Excuse my interruption.
No problem. So the commonality between both expulsion appeals and interdistrict transfer appeals, neither one are situations where you're reviewing these cases, what we say de novo, or fresh. You're looking at the evidence all over again. You're not sitting as like a court that's going to reweigh the decision of the board. You're really looking at procedural issues. So for interdistrict transfer appeals, there's a few key questions. You want to mainly look at whether the district followed its policy. And this is in policy. I'm really just summarizing. So if you need a reference for that, check out 5117.1. But you want to look at whether the district followed their policy in rendering their decision. You're looking at whether their decision is actually supported by whatever evidence came in the record from the family that made the appeal, or from the district side. And you only override a district's decision if there would be substantial harm to the student. And so this is where your discretion comes in, and this is where we can probably think back to past cases. And there's a number of factors listed in your policy, and I think last time we went through a revision of the policy. We talked a lot about like which factors were appropriate. And so you have a list, and there are things like, is there going to be a danger to the health of the student if they stay in the district of residency? Is there some sort of severe hardship, some sort of continuity if they're close to like, finishing out a grade span or something like that? Those kinds of things are usually those are the factors you guys have decided. Those aren't necessarily from Ed Code, but what you've decided are going to be things you can consider if you're going to potentially override the district's decision. And the only other point I would make about it is that when these decisions are made by a governing board, which I don't see happen that often, a lot of times they're made by like an admin or something like that, but there's a little extra deference that's given to decisions under your policy for if it goes like through a process where like an admin, makes the decision, then it's appealed to their own governing board. You give it a little more credibility, I guess, in those situations under your policy. So that's basically it with inter-district transfers. I know we have a lot more experience with those. So those are some key things to look for, and obviously check out your policy. For expulsions, they're a little bit different. That policy, let me see, it's I think 5144.3.
And as Austin, you're looking it up, just so for the board to know in your history, we looked and it's been 11 years since we've had an expulsion appeal. So that can help you know where you were sitting when the last one came before us. Thanks.
Yeah. So yeah, this is the really helpful document though. I think there's one copy going around. So take a look at that. That's the Santa Barbara County Education Office Expulsion Appeal Guide. And so that outlines what you're looking for in the expulsion appeals. And basically the gist of it is you're just making sure that the student got a fair shake, that due process protections were all met. So there's less discretion, like with the IDTs, you're looking at all these factors and there's potential there to overrule a district board in certain situations. Here, it's a little more narrow, I guess. And so you're looking for, did the board act in excess of its jurisdiction, for instance? Like, are they trying to expel somebody and they didn't meet the timeline? It's a year later or something like that. They don't have jurisdiction to do that. Are they trying to expel them on charges that are not expellable offenses under the education code? That would be outside their jurisdiction as well. So things like that, are probably pretty easy to spot, but we can certainly flag those if something like that comes up. And I am completely unfamiliar with the facts of the expulsion that's making its way to you next month. You're making sure that they got a fair hearing, and that just means that there's certain procedural protections that apply in any kind of administrative hearing, like they're able to see the evidence against them. Did they get notice of the charges? Were they able to, have witnesses or counsel or things like that? And these are, by the way, these are all things I'm going to be looking at as I'm reviewing it. And so, we can talk about it as you deliberate and things like that. So, just FYI. And then you're looking at whether there was any kind of abuse of discretion by the governing board, if the evidence was clearly in one direction and they decided, we just don't like this kid, so we're going to get rid of him. Something like that would be considered an abuse of discretion. So we're looking for that. And then if there's any kind of new evidence that wasn't considered by the governing board, you can consider it. You can actually remand the case, which I think we've talked about for IDTs before, but the only time you can really remand these expulsions are if there's new evidence that hadn't been considered. And the other option is you can actually hear it yourself de novo. And there's that word again. So you can, instead of remanding it to the governing board, you can say, you know what, we're going to hear this ourselves. We're going to do it next week, set a hearing, and have the expulsion hearing all over again and consider the new evidence. So that's pretty much it. So yeah, advice is stay in your lane with the IDTs. It's really, did they apply their policy correctly? And then with the expulsion, was the due process met and did the kid get a fair shake at his own governing board? So That's it. And I'm going to be looking at all this stuff so that I can be useful to you when you deliberate and during the hearings next month.
Question?
Yes.
On IDT, you made an interesting observation, and I'm thinking of many we've had over the years. Different districts have different approaches and processes for considering them. Do we know when you were making the distinction between a review only at the administrative level or a full board level? Do we typically know from the record?
I think it's usually pretty clear. They have to submit that kind of information. I'm thinking of packets that we've gotten before. If it was voted on by the board, and I don't know that I've seen one that the board actually decided. I think most of the ones I've seen have been decided by an administrator, but that would be requested, I think, if a board actually made a vote.
I mean, it's been a while, but it seems to me it is a recommendation, or maybe it's a consideration by an administrator, but it is a board action,
Right.
right? I
Mhm.
mean, the board is voting whether or not they had a robust discussion presentation or they merely approved administrator, but it is a board action that will review it.
Yeah, I think legally it would be considered because they probably have delegated that
Right.
within their own policy to an administrator to decide. But as I read your policy, I think you give more weight when a governing board has taken it up themselves and made the decision versus an administrator.
And if I may, Madam Chair, thank you. I believe this actual topic has come up in deliberations and discussion as a matter of process for the family use typically, if they were able to be heard by the board or if they were heard by an administrator. And I know that Renee Wheeler, you're here, and Bridget Boblets, if you wanted to make comment on that as well, just so that we can recall, because I know this has been an item that we've really wanted to emphasize for districts to ensure that the family has had due process and has been heard appropriately. Bridget?
Are you asking about this specific case or just in
No.
general?
Yeah.
So I will just make one comment in general that many policies for districts, as we look at this policy 5117.1, I think is what it is. There's been a change in many of the policy language that our districts have. And that is that it used to be that a decision would be rendered and then there was an appeal process that went to the district's governing board, and then it would come to a county board. And as we continue to receive these, and I believe this board policy is set in this way as well as what I looked at last week, is that removal of appealing to their own district board has somehow come out of board policies and even in the CSBA samples. And so it goes from possibly the administrator, which is many times what is happening, or a designee. And then it is an automatic appeal to the county board. So I will just say that I'm pretty sure I'm looking at Renee to confirm that in this case, that was the process. So I do not believe that it went from the administrator to the district board as a hearing and then to the county board. And again, we saw several of those at the last round, and we do continue to see that in the district's board policies as their language. So
I know that we have the county office, and I'm looking directly at my friend Renee, has a great record of a history of hearing about put on your seatbelts. This is what we have next month. And I can promise you, no member of the board is disappointed when we hear it has been resolved. And every one of them is different. Everyone due process. They're given an opportunity, but I applaud your past efforts and am ready to applaud your ongoing efforts. And I think, I'm guessing a lot of people in retrospect think I'm really glad. I mean, it's a tough process. It's tough for us, but it's nothing like the families, the students, the districts that are involved. So go get it.
I just had a logistical question about the packet that we'll receive, just the timing on that.
Oh, this is your first.
I did the district.
Oh, you did
yeah,
do
but
an
I didn't do-
inter-district.
But I
Okay.
just didn't. for the frame, So I just wanted to get
I'm glad you
clarification.
asked. I was just looking at my calendar here so that I could clarify or I'll tell you our aim. Our aim. We're receiving the information. We're wanting to put a comprehensive packet together, which is why you don't have pieces right now. We'd rather have it very well organized for you. So your next board meeting is May 9th. And so we're looking, and of course, the materials come to you, not electronically, but in hard copy, because we want to make sure that they're kept confidential with you. So we're aiming that you will have them in your hands on or around Monday, the 29th. So it's not the Monday of the board meeting, but the Monday of the week prior to the board meeting. That's our aim. So in other words, by the end of April, say 26th, we will have put a final bow on things and then been able to mail those out to you. That's our goal at this time that we're working toward. Am I getting a thumb? Can we get a thumbs up? Okay, great. Yeah, we were just talking about that today, so I want to make sure. Yeah, thank you very much. I know it takes a lot of time to read through those. You want to mark them. You want to have some questions. And so it will be a different time frame of you receiving those materials than the board materials for May. Yeah. Thank you.
To note that our brand new board member might need a little workshopping around that concept of extraordinary circumstances.
Yes.
What constitutes hardship? What does continuity really mean? Those are the things we stumble on. They're often deciding factors. So
Yes. Yes.
we can
I plan
be-
to connect with Vita Marie Flores, our newest board member, prior to the May board meeting to go through this. And she said she'd be watching the video as well. So yeah, the recording for training. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Austin. It's, I think I'll just start the meeting next time with stay in our lane. You know, just,
one.
yeah,
Yeah.
know our boundaries and just, we don't need to go beyond that. Okay, future agenda items. I mentioned that not next month, but at some point we will talk about our time slots for our board meetings. And I can't even read my notes. Oh, I know what this is. This one has been in the works for a little while, that our organizational committee at our May meeting will give a short update on where they are with the mission objectives priorities discussion. So it won't be brought to the board level for discussion, but I would very much appreciate a short update from that committee on where they're at and what they have yet to look at and do before they come to the board with a. And I would very much like that committee to come to the board with a recommendation
Thank you.
of a process, where we go from here, not just I shouldn't say just, not a group of regurgitation of the information you've received, but an actual, where do we go from here?
Madam Chair, if I may
Yes.
also insert as a reminder for the May board meeting. So at this point, as you know, unless things change, you'll have an interdistrict transfer appeal hearing, you'll have an expulsion hearing appeal as well. And we have at this point, planned Teacher of the Year announcement. classified employees of the year announcement are both planned for May. So it could be a very emotion filled, very emotion filled meeting, because when we have all these wonderful celebrations, but also determinations by the board that really change the lives in terms of the families, it can be heavy. So I wanted to make sure that you knew that and was front loaded today for May.
And there may be a discussion of the timeline for that board meeting as to when public discussion happens, or, when the sections
Yeah.
are, because
Well,
some of them, we've got people coming in from the outside, and having a time certain is, kind of critical. And so all the things that are time certain will be lined up, and then we'll get left here after dark. No.
yes, yes.
Mary,
Our main meeting is in Santa Maria still.
Let me
I
confirm.
don't think so.
I have it in my calendar.
It's not every other.
I think I just want to verify.
It,
Ooh,
And if the IDT and expulsion are for North County
would ask
students, that would
Santa
work
Barbara.
better.
I have it
It
in,
is
we
in
have it in
Santa
Santa Barbara.
Okay.
And then the June meeting, I know I want to say it by looking it up first. So June, we moved it to the 14th. The 14th, June 14th is in Santa Maria.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yes. So May, Santa Barbara, June, Santa Maria.
And this is not your first rodeo in terms of planning, but just thinking out loud, that the happy part of the agenda that typically involves a lot of guests will be towards the front of the meeting, correct?
That's the current thinking, yes.
I mean, it seems
Yes,
to me,
yes.
because particularly whether someone elects closed meeting or not, it gets to be very dysfunctional having everyone leave the room,
Right.
come back. It just seems very natural to me, and to the benefit of everyone involved on every item, to have teacher of the awards, everyone here, and then the people for the two hearings know that they're welcome to, like everyone, to attend any part of the meeting, but realizing they really don't have to be here until 3:15 or whatever the time.
Right. Thank you for that input and suggestion. We're going to work really hard to organize and orchestrate a meeting that's very thoughtful for the audience, as well as the energy of the board. It really takes a lot of your focus as well. So we'll make sure to really work towards that, and to the extent we can, communicate it as early as possible for
Now,
everybody.
in past interdistrict appeals, they've had the option to have it closed. Do we know yet if this one?
You know what, Judy, excuse me, Madam Chair, I don't have that information
Okay.
yet. We're still working with the families, but
Yeah,
we'll
when-
make
when we
sure
get the
to let
packet,
you
it'll
know.
be in the packet.
Absolutely.
And then does the expulsion, can it also be closed or open? Okay, so you'll just let us know when.
It's
we get
actually
the
closed by
package.
default. And
Closed
they
by
can ask
default.
for it to be open. So
Oh,
I think that's right. Yeah. For IDTs.
okay. Mhm. Okay, then we're all set. Thank you very, very much, everybody, today for a great meeting, and see you next
I'll
month.
move to
Oh.
adjourn.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mary
We've got
Beth.
power here, the power of the
Ready to
gavel.
go. Yeah. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned.
You were right.